show at 6 o'clock. Are we good? We're good with the camera. So with that, we'll call our meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight? Hearing none, we'll accept a motion to accept the agenda as presented then.
So moved.
Motion support. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. We have an agenda. Roll has been taken.
Yes.
It is completed, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I notice we've got a couple of scouts in the audience. Would you do us the honor of coming forward and leading us in the pledge?
Go ahead.
You can both come up if you want. Bring the whole family even. What the hell?
This is their night. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, next we're going to look for the approval of the minutes of the May 2023 regular meeting. Your pleasure. Have a motion support. Are there any comments, questions, additions, deletions? We have one I know of that Sarah has made in page 4, paragraph 3.
Following resolution number 2023-0145.
Okay, and she says following the resolutions 2023-045, and it's the public safety director is not public safety, it's public services, I believe. Mr. Ringel is the proper title. He's not taking over the public safety department today, at least. So with that correction, is there anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, no? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on up, we've got the request for purchase to consider a request for purchase to Maverick Environmental Equipment in the amount of $18,360 for a 28-day rental of a 2019 McCluskey Trommel, which will be used for screening compost at the DPW yard waste site. Your pleasure.
Move to approve.
Motion support. For some background there?
Yes, definitely. This is something we do every 2 to 3 years, depending on how much compost we get out there. We ran some numbers a few years ago. We brought to the commission to talk about actually buying our own. But once we looked at the cost of renting it as opposed to buying it, it just makes sense to every 2 to 3 years we rent it. Maverick is a local company right there on Jerome Road, so they just bring it down to our site and we screen for a couple, 3 weeks to get it all taken care of. If you went out to the airway site, we do have a small one. It's about yay big. It's about the size of a dump, an excavator dump. But that takes a lot of time to go through that screen. So that's why we rent this one. It gets it done in a reasonable time. And that's the soil the soil you see out that we put out next to Washington Field after it gets screened.
Which I noticed for the first time that I've ever noticed it all disappeared.
Yeah.
It's all gone. The big, huge pile that was there is gone. That's good.
It's been going away quicker.
Yeah,
It
I've
feels
noticed,
like
yeah,
even our chip bark.
Yeah, but it's also gone. It feels great.
Any more questions? Okay. With that, we have a motion on the table. All those in favor would be yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried, and we are renting a piece of equipment to screen dirt, then, or screen compost. At this point, yes. Next, we are to consider a request for purchase to Ideal Asphalt seal coating in the amount of $11,245 for crack filling and seal coating of the Public Works parking lots.
Move approval.
Support. Got a motion support. Give some color on this one.
Yep, this is that time of year again. The garage and the other public works facilities, it's time to seal coat them and crack repair. So they obviously last longer than just letting them deteriorate further. Then it gets to the point where they're total reconstruction projects. So this takes care of that one. And as you can see from the subject matter, we did go out and ask for some other bids, and the one from Ideal was the only contractor that came back with the work scope, and submit the proposals. So yeah, a lot of people are busy out there, so.
Okay. And would just note, it says Public Works parking lots, but this includes the lot, I believe, across the street, right? The church?
No, this is just for the
This is
public
not for
works
that one,
parking
too?
lot. There should be no S there, that's just for the public works lot.
So it's just the one lot then?
Thank you for that clarification.
Oh, okay. All right, so all those in favor say yes?
Yes. Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. Next is consider a request to purchase from Rural Professional Services Company in the amount of $159,000 for construction and engineering services for the north of Washington/Pine Avenue Interceptor Sewer Replacement Project. Your pleasure there.
Move to approve.
Or,
Motion support.
Yep, this is part of our 2-year project that we discussed to run a new line from our wastewater treatment plant to Pine Avenue, and the booster, correct, Dave, or is that just the
No.
pipe? This is the pipe, okay. That's just the pipe. This would cover all the on-site oversight of the construction. One, we don't have enough staff right now to hit all the projects we got going on. And 2, this is a little more complicated of a project than we're used to dealing with. The size and scope is a 2-year project. So to have someone on site that's more of a certification from an engineering background is probably a good idea to have them there, and they'll be there on site as long as the construction crews are there to make sure everything's getting done correctly. It's amazing the prices, that you're seeing on things, but that's, it's over $2 million project, and that's right in line with what's that side of the project would cost for oversight. So.
And so will this, can you remind me, is this the time to talk about things that we do?
Yes.
Okay. If that is going to improve people with sewer issues, I have somebody that lives on the corner of Pine and Liberty, that they said every 3 months they get backup sewage in their basement. And so they were asking me when we were going to fix that. And I said, well, you may be part of the row of hospital doctors' offices, but I don't know. But is this project, is that going to help with problems, or this is just, I can't remember.
We'd have to get, I think, we'll get their address, and then we'll have to just take a look at what their
Okay.
issue may be.
Okay.
Everything that flows to that pipe, it will be better.
Better,
Yeah,
okay.
oh yeah.
Right,
If we
okay.
don't do this,
Yes.
we're in trouble long term.
Right.
This also feeds, from the hospital. This takes everything from the
Yeah.
hospital too. So,
Okay.
and this has to be done before we start construction in 25 for our Pine Avenue rehab. But I can't answer that
Sure.
without knowing.
Yeah, it was more of a
specifics.
general overview of that this will help the flow, but, yeah.
Yeah, it will, obviously, it will help, it would definitely help the whole system, because this is a
Okay.
major line, but to that specific location,
yeah.
that's a different thing to take a
Okay.
look at.
Thank you.
Are we upsizing that line?
Oh, yeah, yes.
You know how big we're going versus what it is?
18-inch line, let's say, there's sections of it that are 8-inch, some are 12, and it's gonna be 18.
So 8 and 12.
So it goes
So
from-
substantial upsize.
Yes, and it's not standard, it goes from 12 to 15 to 18. So there's progression as it moves along the system where it gets bigger. It's about,
There's the friend that has complained of the issues, so we were just talking about sewage pipes.
Anybody else have questions? Okay, hearing none, we've got a motion on the table. All those in favor of a yes?
Yes.
Any opposed say no. The motion is carried.
Can we just, you can talk during public comment, but just to kind of say, there is a project that we're doing upsizing lines, repair from the plant through to Pine to make way for an upgrade that's happening in 2025. But Eric, Stephanie, he said there may need to be something addressed long before then.
Yeah, but we can talk afterwards,
Okay.
because we'll need details, because what we're doing there will help the overall system, but
That'd be
we
great.
don't know exactly what your particular issue is, so we'll have to talk about that after the meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
talk to me after the meeting, we can look at it.
So all, the next item is to consider a request for purchase to S.A. Mormon and Company in the amount of $61,040 for 18 new entry and passage doors in the Public Works building. Your pleasure. Motion support. Background?
Yep, if you've been out to our garage, it's, everything out there is original almost, except for the roofing system basically. That takes care of the doors will be updated, and there's a lot of, there's ones that are out there that are rusted. Two, this also provides for security. These will have strike locks like we have in City Hall here in other areas. We keep, obviously, we haven't got them yet, but for water and wastewater, those doors are always locked. Currently, depending on when you show up there, sometimes the doors are unlocked, or that's been issues with all the equipment and things that we have out there. So this project will take care of that. As you can see from the subject line, we did receive 3 different types of bids. The S.A. Mormon and Company will be supplying doors, the magnetic door strikes and the ORK systems will be providing the door security. Am I reading that right now?
The systems come next.
The systems come next, yes. So the Mormon and Company will do the doors, and then ORK systems will be installing the strikes and the card system. We did receive a bid from Kowalski Construction Company that they would do both, but their bid came in higher than using the 2 companies that are
Okay. Anybody else? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. The motion is carried. Next, you are to consider a request for purchase to ROK Systems in the amount of $33,504.55 for door card reader installation at the Public Works building. Pleasure in this item.
Support.
Support. I presume this has something to do with the last one.
Yep, so once the doors go in, this company will be putting in the security system with door strikes.
Look at that.
Sounds like we have here the same company that we've used for City Hall.
Improve security. Good idea. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. The motion is carried. Next up, recommendation on bids. Consideration of a resolution to receive and award a bid for seal and stripe parking lot maintenance of the municipal building lots 1 and 2, together with the East Superior Christian Church parking lot, which is pursuant to a June 28, 2022 agreement that we approved from D&D Asphalt Specialists LLC for a total bid amount of $14,300, and also to approve the related request for purchase. Your pleasure on this item.
Move to adopt.
Support.
Motion support. Still looking for?
Yep, this is something that we've been talking about doing for a while. Step 1 was getting an agreement with East Superior Christian Church, because we've been sharing that parking for, almost 3 decades probably, and we extended that, so we're working together with them to get their seal coat done at the same time. This takes care of our lot to the west and our employee parking lot to the north. Also the crack seal. We did, as part of this bid, we did ask for numbers for a company to put in the new driveway approaches or fix the approaches for the fire hall and for the employee parking. We did not get any bids on those. Everyone's busy, but since we had the 1 bidder to get the seal coat and crack sealing done, we figured get this on the agenda, get that work done, and then we will put the bid out again for those approaches for the fire hall and the employee parking. See if we can get something in a couple months. But we recommending to get moving forward with this particular project.
Perhaps the concrete work could go with the sidewalk project.
We could.
Somebody's in town doing concrete, that makes sense. Okay, anybody else have questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would be no. The motion is carried. Thank you. Excuse me, resolutions. First up is consideration of a resolution requesting withdrawal and release from the Gratiot Community Airport Authority. Your pleasure.
So moved. Support.
Okay, motion support. talked about this a
Yes,
bunch.
yeah, a bunch,
Give
yep.
some background for the camera.
Yep, definitely. A couple meetings ago, we did pass a resolution of understanding with Gratiot County for how this, the withdrawal would work and how the land leases and all those sort of things would work going forward at the airport as the county takes over the operation and financial responsibility at the airport. This is the first step beyond the resolution that we approved with them. Each community that is a member, that would be us, Ithaca, St. Louis, Arcata Township, and Pine River Township, all need to pass these resolutions of withdrawal from the current airport authority. And these resolutions then go before the full current board. Then we pass another resolutions to accept those withdrawal requests. And then the only remaining entity that's left would be Gratiot County. From there, those resolutions go down to Gratiot County, which they will look at and then pass a resolution basically reinstating the new authority, which is going to be the Gratiot County Board of Commissioners. And then they will appoint an airport advisory committee or council, however they'd like to word it, that will advise them, kind of like how they do Commission on Aging and other departments, for the operation, budgeting, and improvements that we need at the airport. So that's the long and short of it. We're hoping to have these taken care of by the 20th. Pine River meets this month, the 9th to 20th. So probably the next meeting, if we can get everything in front of the county, the next step would be their July. I think they're meeting on a Thursday of the first week of July, because their regular meeting falls on July 4th. So I think they've removed it to the Thursday of that week. So that will take all these resolutions, including the one from the authority board, down to them, and that will be approved there. And then we move on to the next step, which will come back to this board for the land use agreements that will come back before this board, because us in the county are the only real owners of property out there. And then there will be an agreement between the county and the city for use, for working with some of our departments that they'll need to help with the transition until they find, like say, our PW services, until they find a way to do the different activities that our department does, that we'll have a contract of services with them they will pay the department to do the work out there. So we're almost there.
Get closer.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
It's been a long process, so thank you for your work on that one. Thank you. Who has questions? I think I'm curious now, just to clarify, the land ownership is going to continue on in its present form.
Yes.
It's just going to be leases between us and the county and the new authority, right?
That is correct. The airport commission owns property, the county of Gratiot owns property, and the city of Alma owns property. We received the land use drafts this week or yesterday, and so Chris and I are reviewing those right now, and then we'll be bringing both those to our respective boards to review. And yes, we'll basically be leasing those properties to the new airport authority for $1, as long as it's an airport. If it ever ceases to be an airport, the agreements, the lands would come back to the current ownerships.
So will the leases involve the current townships as entities as well?
No, because they're not.
But if the authority currently owns land,
The current authority does not own land.
Oh, I
They
thought
own
you said
the
that.
assets. They own assets like their part ownership, and when we redid the hangar doors on the corporate hangar, when we did repavements of the north, south, east, west runways, those sort of things, the authority that in its current form has.
okay, I guess I was misunderstanding. I thought one of the authority did have title to something.
No,
It's all either Elma alone or Elma and the county jointly?
That's correct. It's
All parcels?
the county, Alma,
Like a county, yeah.
and the airport commission, which is made up of only the city of Alma and Gratiot County.
Okay, so those will remain joint.
Yes,
Okay.
they'll remain joint. Yeah.
I keep it straight in my head.
No.
A lot of moving parts there, but I'm glad we were able to resolve that with the commission.
Yes, yeah. And I appreciate their work on it and the new administrator's work on it out there.
The tenor changed, so. Okay, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no? The motion is carried. Next, we are to consider a resolution to approve a request from Impact Outreach Ministry, which is located at 550 North Luce Road, to hold church services in an outdoor tent with amplified noise on August 18th through the 20th, 2023, and August 25th through the 27th, 2023, pursuant to ordinance number 605, which allows the city commission to approve a variance to the noise ordinance. Your pleasure.
Move to approve.
Support.
Okay, we have more support, comments, questions?
They would like to have a tent out front to provide some services on those days, and they wanted to be good neighbors, make sure they're following all the rules, because, out there they might not be heard, but they just want to be good neighbors, so that's what they asked for the variance.
Do you know what times?
I didn't ask for those, I just, give me dates,
assume
that
they're
way
not
it's
in the
good
middle of
for...
the night?
No, they're not in the middle of the night, no. No, but still, if you have
They check their weekends, so if
Yeah,
school
there we-
started, it's not going to be a...
and still,
They're gonna have a concert by the kids in Germany.
and technically, if you have amplified music, you need to have permission from this board to do that. So that's what they're doing, and like I said, they probably aren't going to be heard out there during those days and those times they're doing it, but they just thought they'd...
But there is a end of day limit, right? I mean,
Yes.
We do with the other concerts and things, we always,
We always put a time on if we know that particular event, that's our next one.
and that's what it is, it's if it's
Yeah.
midnight or 11 or whatever, I don't know when they are, but just so we know what they are.
Yes, and that gives guidance to,
The neighbors, yeah. Okay, anybody else? All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no? The motion is carried. We have some parties out there. Consideration of a resolution to approve a request from the Pine Knot Bar to host a live band in their rear parking lot from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. on Saturday, June 16th, 2023, pursuant to ordinance number 605, which allows the city commission to approve a variance to the noise ordinance. Your pleasure on this item.
Move approval.
Support.
Motion support.
This is the first time we're trying a live band there. They've reached out to us, for relief on the noise ordinance because they will be going up till midnight. They are in the downtown area, so that, you're expecting to have some more activity happening in that area for this type of thing. They have reached out to the State Liquor Control Commission for that evening to expand their service area for individuals that want to go out and watch the band in there. They're going to have a fenced-in area out back to do that. Our public safety department has signed off on that, and they sent the Pine Knot has sent that back to the state of Michigan for their final approval. If they don't get it, then they are not allowed to, bring beverages out beyond the walls of the building. But if they do allow for this temporary use, then they're allowed to bring it out to that fenced area. So, it's nice to see them trying to do something different to provide some extra.
Do we have a rough idea of how loud, because you do now have residents that live directly across the street now?
Laura, I can't answer that right now, but I can talk to Jennifer and ask her about that and let her know that we do have neighbors there and they can be considerate about it.
I don't know if you were, sorry, Eric. When we did Party on State Street and stuff, the band was right there. We had residents across the street too.
But this one will go a little later than that, because I think we stopped at 10 o'clock when we did
No, I
the
thought it
Party on
was-
State Street. So,
That was the-
no, I think we did at 10, I think, yeah. So, but I will talk to Jennifer, no problem.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving down to reports of officers, boards, and committees. The commissioners may receive the following reports by one resolution, or any commissioner may remove any item within the section for individual discussion and vote. The items before us tonight are the Parks Committee, May 2022 draft minutes. Boy, that was a tough one.
Missing two.
Excuse me, sir. Yeah.
Another two.
And there's a reading deficiency here too, I'm afraid. So, next item is the Gratiot Community Airport Authority, May 31, 2023 draft minutes. The Alma Police Department, May 2023 report. The Alma Transit, May 2023 report. The Finance, May 2023 report. The City Manager's newsletter for tonight. Your pleasure.
Move to receive 1 through 5.
Motion on 1 through 5. Comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Anybody care to make a motion on the City Manager's newsletter?
Move to receive the city manager.
We have motion and support. Got a question in first, or you want to go over this?
Let's go with this.
Okay.
All right. We've already taken care of our airport resolution, so thank you. On the agenda after this is we have a water sprinkler meter policy. As we are going through updating policies, procedures, and verifying what we don't have and do have, we found that we don't have we did not have a written policy on our water sprinkler program. We had a process that we used and was consistent with the process, but we never had anything in writing. So on the agenda tonight is to approve the actual policy for that. And so probably the major...
I'm sorry, I was just checking about what people have, like in the ground sprinklers that are hooked up to a separate water system. Oh.
Yep, and typically what happens in the past, they would call our billing department and say, it's that time of year, please turn on my water. And basically it's not turning it on, it's basically starting the billing cycle.
Okay.
Because we do not go in and physically turn off that meter. What it gives is a moratorium on charging you, that's the resident, for the sewer side of it, because for every gallon that goes through the system, that meter, you're charged on the other side for the sewer going into the sewer. Since it's being a sprinkler, it's going on the lawn, it's not going into our sewer, so they're given a break on being charged for that.
Oh, gotcha.
So they would call and say, okay, I'm turning my meter on for sprinkling this year, and then at the end of the year they were supposed to call and say, okay, I'm turning it off. Well, that works sometimes and other times it doesn't. So in the policy, we just put a timeline in there, beginning April 1st through October 31st. And the reason we chose that, it makes sense, that's when people kind of start doing those things anyway, but it also coincides with our on-street parking ban, when we open up and close our restrooms at the park, and then in our yard waste program, when we start our yard waste program. So we're hoping that if we can keep those types of things consistent, that when someone says, hey, when does yard waste start? Well, it starts at the same time they close or open the bathrooms, or vice versa. So we're hoping that's a little more helpful, and then folks don't have to remember when to call or not call, and it's set in stone moving forward. So, and then through the policy, we won't go through that, but that was the big change. We've never had before that it's just going to be an automatic. We started April 1st and concluded October 31st. All the other stuff pretty much remains as it was before. So, just trying to get things cleaned up and easier to understand.
Anybody have comments on that? Because full disclosure, I do. I happen to have two parcels that have irrigation systems in ground. And it's, right now, well, one of them at my house has the second meter. It doesn't have a second line coming into the house, it's just a second meter off the same main line. And I guess I question why, going forward, I'm gonna have to pay a second ready-to-serve charge on that. According to this proposal, it sounds like I'll be paying a second ready-to-serve charge. It's the same, it's just feeding off the same line. Is there a reason that that's going to increase? Is there a thought on that? I mean,
That's why I put it in the newsletter, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Because,
I mean, I could see if I had a separate tap and a whole separate, but mine comes into my house and there's two meters. One goes to irrigation, one goes to feed the house. The other parcel I got, it just goes into the building, it's a commercial building, goes into the building and feeds the building, and one meter, I'm paying the sewer on that already, so it's here and there, I haven't separated that out.
And so, this could be completely wrong, but the way I understood what you said is you're saving on paying the sewage part when it flips to that, but so maybe you're paying the ready-to-serve portion, because it's all coming to the same thing, like you're saving, because it's not distinguishing, I would guess, if it's all one line, what's irrigation and what's in your house.
Right,
So you're
the line
saving on
feeding the
sewer
house
part.
feeds both meters.
Right.
So I get the ready to serve, but it's still the same line, why should I pay a second charge? still coming off of one line.
Well, then should you, and this is just for the sake of argument, I don't know if this is, but shouldn't you then pay the sewer for all of it? Because you don't know which is the,
No, it is metered separately. There's two meters. One line coming into the house splits into two different meters. The meter for the house, obviously, we pay the sewage and all that on. The one for the irrigation system pays for water, but it doesn't pay, I'm not charged for the sewage portion. I'm assuming there's other property owners that are in a similar circumstance. Because when we built the house, we actually bought a second meter. You go in and pay, I don't know, whatever, 2 or 3, 400, whatever they were. I don't know, I don't remember what they were. It's years ago. But I know we paid for the second meter for that very reason.
I was under the impression from years ago that during summer months that there was a reduction in the ratio between the water and sewer during the summer because everybody is watering their lawn and washing cars and doing stuff like that that is not, going into the sewer system. That whatever the ratio, you pay 10% of your water goes, 10% of your water is what you pay for sewer. In the summer, that's reduced to 5% or whatever that magic number is. I was under the impression that that was the case. We pay less for sewer.
That is the case.
That is the case, okay.
It's based on a 12-year rolling 12-month average. So you pay sewer on your 12-month average, not on your actual sewer usage.
Oh, okay.
Months.
Okay.
Well,
I don't know how that figures into the calculation.
Even if you're washing your car in your driveway, it's still going through either the main sewer on the street, or, it's going through, right, the wastewater?
it would go to the storm, or it would soak into your lawn.
Yeah.
That's right. One or the other. It wouldn't go into the sanitary.
Oh, gotcha.
Which is
Okay,
what
gotcha.
what the other is.
We're still
The costly way to
so people
dispose of this is sanitary system.
Yeah.
But if we haven't gotten there yet to approve it. If the commission wants some additional information, we can hold off on approving that tonight and bring back some more information if you'd like. It's completely doable. So, if that's what you want.
Yeah, well, I think so. I don't have that, but it seems like to understand what you're paying for and why. If there's a reason that we can back up, sure, but if not, then we can have it. Yeah, we can understand the background and why. And when you try to find some background, you find that it's not sound, then improve it.
All right, that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
I'm not going to go into this one, but Marnie is here from MERS to give us a presentation on our retirement system, so I'm going to go into that. The investment policy, we did provide that in the newsletter. We talked about it a few months ago, our investments currently in Michigan Class and across all the other funds, and then right now that we're pretty heavily invested in Michigan Class because of the interest that's being paid out at the moment, but the commission was interested in looking at other ways to diversify that portfolio. Looking at what we have currently, we can, obviously Michigan Class is there, but we can invest in, it has to be approved by this board. We have Mercantile Bank, Commercial Bank, Flagstar, PNC, Isabella, Huntington, Treasury Direct, Edward Jones, and then of course Michigan Class. We'd like to kind of get the feedback from this commission is, would you be interested in looking at investing in credit unions? Currently, our policy says we can do that, but we've never named any credit unions to do or go out and ask for proposals for investment or anything. They'd have to fall underneath our current policy for financial institutions that we would invest with. But before we started, going out and calling them and getting information from them to bring back to this board to add that, we just want to see if that's something that we do want to do. From there, obviously, we didn't get into too much detail. When and how much, we should start to diversify out of Michigan Class. Right now, we haven't seen anything that's been too disruptive at this point, but it's good to talk about this and look at what the commission feel more comfortable with. We are over 70% invested with the funds that we can invest in Michigan Class right now. And the last, I think Curtis said, was like 5.1, 5.2%, and it's done on a daily basis. So we're receiving some good investment dollars coming back that's helping out with some of our budgeting things. But what the concerns that the commission had is very valid, and we need to discuss is making sure that everyone's comfortable with how much we have in one particular fund or bank or institution. So what does everyone kind of think about that?
I'm not real big on financial stuff, okay? I still have trouble with math. But I don't see why not. I mean, they are as safe as FDIC deposits. They tend to be relatively local in origin and management and service. If they would be interested in doing it and meet all the requirements, I can't imagine why not.
You're talking about credit unions, those statements, correct?
Right, yeah.
Just for clarity.
Yeah, and I did appreciate that, because I'm not real great at it, I'm either well-versed in it, but I thought that the discussion of allowing staff to make a determination for a longer stretch of time than the 2 years or 1 year that we're currently doing.
Yeah, and that'd be the other thing. Right now, we're limited at 2-year CDs or CDers. Is that, if the commission would be amenable to looking at 3 to 5 years. When things change, then we can change with it.
Well, and I guess that my only question, I mean, I did notice that like Edward Jones, I mean, I don't know, and this could be completely, is that part of a normal request of our financial person to be, I mean, it's not day trading, but to be looking at, I mean, I that seems like a big thing to be, I mean, I'm sure Curtis is following that stuff. However, if the more we diversify or expand, which I am in favor of, local places, but I worry that that's too much for all the other things going. I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm asking. Is it too much to ask to be paying attention to all that, or no?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's fine.
I mean, you're either paying attention to those things or you're not. So that's where I think.
I'm keeping up on it daily as it is. But I mean, obviously, if we could always look into getting a financial advisor too. That's something I've been approached by a couple. I've had some meetings with a couple. We could talk about that if the board would be interested in it. Obviously there's charges and fees and stuff like that involved, but they're also more in the weeds than I am, so it's the cost benefit of it.
Yeah, and so that was my only question. I mean, I think it sounds like a great idea, and I like the idea of if it's better to keep it, instead of juggling it, but I also, I worked 1 year at Edward Jones, so I know just enough from 30 years ago to be dangerous, but I worry that, that's too many balls in the air juggling to try to pay attention, and so I don't know.
No, those are valid points, and like Curtis mentioned, we have been approached by folks who come and help manage us, but then there's a substantial cost that comes along with that too. But like when we go out for a request for, quotes for what people have for interest rates and availability for what we have in our policy, obviously, we look at CDs in those up to 2 years, and we get those back in. Michigan Class is a little different because it's a daily thing. It's liquid each day. We can move things out, move it in, and since the interest rate's been so high, we're not the only municipality doing this right now.
Sure.
Trying to benefit off that as much as possible, but we understand where the commission is coming from.
Well, and we do have criteria. It's not like we're going to go to Jim's Bank. There are things that we have to follow. So I think probably within that is, manageable. But that's my only. I think it sounds great. Those are my only concerns.
That's perfect.
Anybody else have comments or? I have some exposure to the market and the processes involved in these things, but my concern majorly was, 70% of our eggs in one basket is always a concern as far as not being diversified, so that was kind of a red flag initially to myself. And also, risk and reward is just we are in a capitalist market. typically when you see more reward, you're taking more risk. So that was a second red flag, for me at least. So I don't have any problem with Curtis, the process he's using. It looks pretty straightforward, pretty fair to all the parties involved, which is what we always like to see. You know, he goes out for bids and the highest bidder wins, right? It's just, at the end of the day, it's math, so it's pretty easy, straightforward for that purpose. Most of the items that Eric, on the list there, the Cedars, the bank accounts and whatnot, they're all either FDIC covered or they're repos of some sort, I believe. Everything, I don't think we've got much non-FDIC exposure other than that Michigan class, which is not FDIC covered, but it is covered by a bond because it's a money market fund. On a personal note, money market funds are Wall Street products. I struggle with that a little bit. We're a local community. I like local investments. So I prefer, if we can keep things locally and support banks and institutions that are investing in building our communities, I think we're better off with that in the long run as well. So those were typically my concerns. As far as going out farther on the yield curve, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I'm not sure. Interest rate risk, which is what typically you call it when you go out farther on the yield curve, you run the risk of in a position of sometimes you win, you'll have a higher interest rate locked in for a longer period of time, sometimes you lose. Most municipalities that I'm dealing with don't go beyond 2 years unless there's specific funds, like a building fund. You're going to build a library wing and you want, you're not going to do it for 10 years, then you might go longer on something like that. And I don't know if we've got some funds like that. If you've got some longer-term funds, that might be very appropriate. But for our just general funds and most of our funds, I would say more than 2 years is probably inappropriate to me.
I agree.
So, that makes sense? Or you were a banker in another life?
Yeah.
Not so long ago?
Right.
So it's not, what you're saying, if I understand correctly, then if it's a longer than the 2 years, it's not this 4.95 guaranteed for that. You're saying it fluctuates, like if you go beyond the 2 years, it's...
Well, you can lock in a rate for 5 years if you want to. You can buy a 5-year CD and lock in that rate for 5 years. But you've got the risk, today, say you locked in 3.5% to 4% for 5 years.
And it doesn't stay that?
It stays at that.
For that number of years.
For that number of years until it matures. If interest next year sky rates to 16%,
I see. Okay.
one time, then you're going to be at the losing end of that for the next 4 years.
And so it's a gamble.
That's the interest rate risk portion of it.
Okay, got it.
It's a gamble, and typically from our fiduciary responsibilities, gambling is not what we're looking for.
Correct.
We want to preserve principal and take care of the taxpayers' funds as best we can. So
Okay, thank you for that.
that's typically why municipalities don't go out longer, unless you've got something, like I said, if you've got funds for a long-term project, then it might make sense, but I'm not aware of any long-term funding.
No, we have
funds that we have. So.
That's on bonds if it's but it's just like, it also is about liquidity, 2 years, it's easier to kind of see where you're going to be, so you have the funds available, so you know when things they're maturing quicker, so they're coming off the books, so you got this much money to use for this, and that's another positive about right now is in Michigan class, it's liquid every day, so, but we need to diversify that, and it's good, thank you for this discussion, because that gives us a good feel for what you're comfortable with, and we'll work appropriately or accordingly, so. But you were okay with looking into some credit union type institutions then? All right. I think we got good.
Like I said, I compliment Curtis. I think he has a good process in place, and I would imagine from his perspective, his team is going on forward. When he goes out for bids, he's got it down so that it's pretty efficient and not terribly time-consuming of your staff time. So it can be done well. If you do it right, it's not a difficult process, but it's getting it started and getting the right things in place. And I think now I'm pretty confident we do now. Yeah. We've got a good team underneath us here.
Well, thanks for the input. That's very good. That's very good. Just there were some a couple fun things that are a little less intense. The library provided their summer programming information for us.
That is impressive.
Everything kicks off today. So I don't know if I want to say this, but Lori said it during our staff meeting, so on June 17th, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the Princess and Pirates Tea Party. So
Come on, guys, you can find it.
you gotta have some fun. Yeah, a little longer. You're gonna have a little longer. It was pretty good. But,
It's all good, we know you.
there's a lot of great programming that's coming up for this year, and we hope people take advantage of it. This is all available on the calendar for the library and Facebook and all those things, so hopefully
There were a lot of kids there today when I drove by.
a lot of great programming, so we thank them for providing the information and for putting this all on for the community this summer. Gemstone Fields, things are still moving along out there. It's been over a year since we given an update. We still call this phase 1 because that's what it is. Of the 41 lots there, 25 of the lots have been developed or in the process of development. In 2008, we received a lot of those through the foreclosure sale, in a tune of 25 of those lots that we've owned. And so right as of this last week, we have 20 of those lots that are in process of development. So that's
We
good
have a
news.
phase 2.
There's a phase 2, but as you can see from those numbers, I still have privately held lots, and there's like 12 of those that are left out there.
That are still vacant.
That are still vacant. So for us to, because the city does own the next piece of property, which would be phase 2, it'd be quite expensive.
This infrastructure is not in.
It's not in.
There's no
phase
water,
2.
sewer,
Or roads, no. So it'd be very expensive without having everything built up in phase 1 to push out to phase 2. But on the positive note, before, about 6 years ago, there was 5 houses out there. So it's a major improvement, major.
Huge difference out there, which makes it much more attractive for the next one to keep going.
And thanks to Adam Weber, because he worked very hard.
He's been very helpful.
Very helpful with the team, I mean, everybody involved, but he's
Very helpful.
helping with the builder and you and everybody here too, so.
It's, the commission deciding to lower the price of the lots is what's done it. The ones that are still sitting there, the privately held ones, they haven't budged on those numbers. And if they don't, they're just gonna be paying taxes on them and mowing them, so. But anyway, it's good news. It's very good news when you drive by out there. Just for the camera and for the commission, we park master plan, the park committee's working on that for the new update, and we do have 2 public meetings coming up to take some comments in from the public. One will be on June 20th from 5 to 7 at the Elm Public Library, and the next night, June 21st, from 6 to 8 p.m. At the Elm Elks Lodge. We do have a flyer that's available on our website, and we've been putting it out on Facebook. Commissioner Allman will be at the Elma Farmers Market with those surveys. So, and how you can do the survey at the farmers market is the flyer. You just do the QR code, brings up the survey. There's about 6 questions, and then it breaks out each park, and we ask for some comments on each particular park. So, real fast and quick to do. So, Roger will be there this Saturday, June 17th, from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m.
7 a.m.
Yeah, 7 a.m. 7 a.m.
Wait a minute.
Setup is a 6.
Yes, don't worry, yeah, so it's 6 o'clock.
You're used to it. I'm driving that bus before dawn.
And the last thing, it's on the agenda for tonight, the transit board, once Commissioner Stahl's term was up, she was our member on that board. So if there's I'm hoping tonight, one of the commissioners would be willing to serve on that board. It doesn't meet maybe twice, 3 times a year, so it's a very low time commitment type board. But we haven't scheduled another meeting yet for the transit board, but before we do, I thought it'd be a good idea.
Is there a typical meeting date that somebody can look at their calendars if they're interested? And I assume you need a commissioner, right?
Yes, we need a commissioner.
So,
I am interested.
I can do it as well.
so if there's specific dates you normally have that, I mean, most boards are like first Tuesday, second Tuesday,
Generally,
third Thursday.
the city manager, Kurt Giles, St. Louis is the one that schedules those meetings, so.
And you don't have a typical pattern for that?
That is Monday at 9 a.m., so.
We talked about it in the past. It's a great idea if we can get a schedule for the year for all these boards out there and have consistent dates. I think that's very helpful. I know for me, it's when their random dates and, even moving around for holidays gets to be, I get lost sometimes, so.
At this point, though, we do not have a scheduled physical date at this point.
So we've got a couple that are interested, maybe you could get
Monday
together
and
with Kurt
Thursdays, most actually.
and establish a regular time, so make sure that the people volunteering would actually be able to attend. I think quite somebody that.
No, I will-
Surprise!
Yeah.
Well, I would think if Roger and Danny are okay with not knowing the schedule, then I can point somebody to know. Unless you wanted to schedule ahead of time.
Roger is retiring from driving the bus as of next Monday is my last day.
Well, congratulations.
So,
What?
yes, yes.
And the ones I have attended, they started at 9 o'clock, and I've been to them on Monday mornings and Thursday mornings. Those are the scheduled the last, I believe, 2. All right. And that's it.
Okay, anybody have any more questions for the city manager at this point? Okay, hearing none, I believe we had a motion to accept his report. So all those in favor would be yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, no. The motion is carried. We now accept your report as well, so thank you. Appointments, consideration of a resolution to appoint a city commissioner as representative on behalf of the city to the Transportation Committee. Anyone care to make a motion?
Move to appoint Roger. Isn't that what we do?
Well, yeah, that would be,
Yeah.
we want to name a person.
Yeah, move to appoint Roger Holman. Retired Roger Holman.
The newly retired.
I will have a lot more time to do that. I have been unable to do many things that take place during the day, but next Monday is my next day. That's the end of the semester for the special ed kids.
It's good to know because we have a lot of other tasks.
Note to self. They have to be cleared through my wife.
Ooh,
There you
that
go.
makes it tougher.
There you go.
Okay, I believe we have a motion and support on the table. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. Congratulations, Roger, on both counts.
Thank you.
Moving down to consideration of a resolution to adopt a new sprinkler meter policy. Your pleasure on the policy.
Move to adopt.
Do you want to?
Motion to table? Move to table the.
we had to talk about it after. Okay.
You're going to come back, so
So
motion.
you do want it to be tabled, but we're asking.
Motion to table.
Motion to table this consideration.
Support motion to table.
So the motion to table and support. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion is carried. It's on the table. Moving down, consideration of a resolution to adopt amendments to the current procurement policy. Your pleasure.
So moved.
So are we moving it to include expanding it beyond the 2 years? Because I thought
No,
that...
procurement policy.
The procurement.
Or purchasing
Okay,
policy.
okay,
I think we talked more about it last
We
week.
talked about it last week.
That's what I
Last
thought. Okay,
meeting.
support.
Yep, last month.
Okay, we had a motion and support. Do you want to go over it real
Yes.
quick again for the members
Yep,
of the...
definitely. Procurement policy is our policy for purchasing items in the city, from staplers all the way up to streets and things. So the change that we're making here, what we requested at the last meeting, was for folks who are purchasing things underneath the department heads. Instead of having to go through a PO process, I think we had it at $250 or something along those lines. Anything over that, they'd have to go through a PO to do that. What the change is moving their purchasing power up to $2,500. Department heads can stay at $5,000. The city manager approval up to $10,000. Anything over $10,000 comes to this board directly. Just as we talked about last month, any purchases obviously have to be budgeted anyway, even if they are just supplies. All department heads are reviewing their superintendents or chief of police, fire chief, when they do purchase things. Everything does come through our payment system that's seen by the finance director, myself, and the department heads. So as we talked about last month, moving it up to 2,500 just will move things along quicker and create less paperwork. So that's the only change we're asking for in this procurement policy. And also, as a positive side note, we are able to let our auditors know that we've reviewed this then again. We did it last year and made some changes, and again this year. So it's good to review these types of policies on a yearly basis in the eyes of the auditors.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, no? Motion is carried. Next is receipt of a presentation from Larry Strange of MP2 Planning regarding the Transportation Needs Study and Service Plan.
Move to receive.
Yeah, we have a motion and
Support.
support now. Okay. Larry, would you like to come up? Thank you. Yes, please. Welcome.
Yes, my name is Larry Strange, and my company, MP Planning, was thrilled to receive this contract and be able to do this work. And we're not local, but this is one of those niche type of businesses that I think not being local sometimes is positive. I have worked, and my company has worked all throughout Michigan, particularly with small urban and rural transit systems, Petoskey, Traverse City, New Haven, Flint, not Flint. I did work at Flint, but that's wouldn't consider Owasso, St. John's. I actually started the system that operates now in St. John's. So we have a broad background in this. And with me on this project were two people, John Drury and Jill Drury. They are married, but John has his own separate consulting firm and contracts with me to do these studies. He's a 20-year former employee of MDOT, a project manager for rural and small transit systems. Jill just retired last year from being executive director for 20 years of the Charlevoix Transit Authority. So they did much of the legwork, working with Brett on the operations, policies, and everything. So we bring the background of my company throughout Michigan and then their specific experience working with MDOT to provide a set of recommendations and options that you guys can consider going forward in the future. So I'm going to try and flip through this thing without going crazy, which I've already messed up. So just look at your screen. This is tight. Basically, we started in September and...
Curtis?
It doesn't work.
It's not working?
It's not working.
Oh, okay.
I apologize for that.
Okay.
Can you see it?
But you can see it there. So anyway, the big part of our schedule was the meat of our project was really the survey. Roger, I think Mr. Allen referenced the survey, and we conducted a survey too, and I'll describe that in a little bit. But that started in December and really wrapped up late in February, and that kind of drove the whole schedule. We have completed basically the final report, which I'm presenting to you this evening. And our work really was focused on providing to Alma Transit Center a picture of how they're doing, what the public and particularly in the county residents in the Out County might think about future transit in that area, and then options to go forward. So that's what we did. Tell you what, maybe you could do this from now so I won't mess up with anybody. You all know more about this system than I do because I haven't done exactly all the work, but I think it's really interesting and that you are sitting here providing service as a city department type operation, actually contracting with an authority, an Act 196 authority, the slipper authority of St. Louis, Pine River, and Ithaca. So that's kind of an interesting situation, I think, as you go forward into the future. You've got some operational options that the city and county and/or, there's a lot of variations that could consider as you go forward to provide transportation that may or may not, in your eyes, be needed in an efficient way, which I think you're doing now, and hopefully with our help you can continue doing that in the future. Go ahead. So your vehicle fleet, I'm not going to dwell on this. You've got a mix of light buses and vans. Other systems are looking at even smaller mixes of vehicles, using smaller vehicles for things like microbus services where you actually have like almost Uber type services within the communities under the auspices of the public transit system, which means it filters through all the MDOT stuff to make sure you get your funding. But and also people are looking at other technologies and not just electric. I mean, the whole world appears to be going to battery-powered electric, but transit is still still in a unique situation in that they have long trips, and with a charging time for batteries, it's still not necessarily, for a lot of systems, it's not efficient. But those are options that you're going to have in the future. Go ahead. And I'm kind of moving through this, so if you have questions, feel free to answer. Your fares are in line with other transit systems of your size. We're doing a similar study in Aranac County, and Aranac County Transit has almost similar fares. Some rural systems operate with zone fares. They cover larger distances, and those can get complicated and expensive. So I really like the system that you have here. On the other hand, other systems, and not necessarily in Michigan, but other states are looking at going no fares. They're seeing it as a service, and the cost of recouping, of figuring out the fares and accounting and collecting money, however you do it, sometimes is more expensive than just not taking fares. So that's an option that you could have in the future. Next slide. So your performance indicators, these are based on MDOT stuff, but basically I wanted to point out two things. One, your total passengers, you had a downfall, as everybody did during the COVID time, and you have rebounded right back to basically where you were, if not higher. In 2019, you had 72,000. You're almost there now, 67,000. So your ridership and the demand for your services appears to be fairly continuous and steady. Next slide. And then if you look at the bottom, if you can see that slide, those blue numbers, $4.25 cost per mile, $61 cost per hour. You're in the mid-range of other communities. I see an 85 for Midland, Dial-A-Ride, but there are also other communities, 59, 42. So you're kind of in the middle of that, which you can go to the next slide now. Means that we believe that you're operating efficiently based on MDOT criteria, based on other systems I've worked with. I certainly don't see any red flags budget-wise or performance-wise with your operation. So the next slide. Well, as I said, we did a survey of the community, and our approach was to do a mailback survey. We wanted to couch it as a statistically valid survey, so we got a mailing list of 10,000, or not 10, we got a mailing list from the County Equalization Office of around 30 to 40,000 parcels. I don't remember the exact number. We parsed that list down to 10,000 by selecting residents and then doing some random selecting, and so we mailed out 10,000 mailings to residents in the county. We received 1,152 responses. Our goal, typically on all these surveys, our goal is 400. 400 is kind of like in the survey world, 400 is like the magic number. You got 400 of almost any population, you can basically state that some other percentage of that population would answer somewhat the same way. That's as clear as I can say that, and that's probably as clear as mud, but at any rate, that's what we got 1,152. We're very satisfied with that. And just some interesting things. 10% of the respondents to this survey, and this was countywide, said they use Alma Transit, and that's pretty high for this type of a system. In Aranac County, where we just were, it was a 7%. Charlevoix, one of our team members was the executive director for Charlevoix, and they have about 4 or 5% of their residents use the transit system. So 10% is pretty high. Most of the people using it are using it for medical or dental appointments, shopping, some for work, and those are numbers that we can look at in more detail for ways you might expand in the future, but those are very similar of these types of systems, which are, I should have said this, they're basically operated as a demand response. You schedule a trip and you go, with some exceptions that are in there. Next slide. This is what I think is pretty interesting. Do you or other adults in your home choose not to drive or limit the amount of driving if possible? 35% say yes. If somebody in their house has an issue with driving. I empathize with this. My father's 95. He still plays golf, but he had a bad wreck about a year ago, and he lives in a little house in a little subdivision, like a quarter mile from the Y, but he can't walk there because of a little nerve thing, and so he goes to the Y at 4. And so it drives other members of my family. I don't live there, which is probably a good thing. But it drives him crazy driving him around. He took a test, and he can drive legally. He's got a driver's license. But my sisters kind of did an intervention. They convinced him to take this test, and the test said, Mr. Strange, you can't drive. So it has devastated him. Not devastated in a bad way, it just makes him mad. But he doesn't drive. And so that's something. 35% of people have a problem with driving. You know, this is a situation that we're going to face as people are living longer. People want to live at home. They don't want to go to assisted living if they don't have to. They want to stay on their farm, on their wherever. And I think in rural, smaller communities, this is going to be a significant service that could be attractive to people, to communities that are trying to attract retirees and other types of population. Anyway, I could go on that, I'll stop. Then the second thing I also thought was interesting, 40% of the respondents said they would consider using public transportation because of gas, convenience, other things. You know, you have to take those numbers with a grain of salt because Americans, you know, we all love to drive. You know, we all love our personal freedom and our mode of choice, but there's a lot of people that are going to consider this in the future. The next slide. So do you support affordable public transportation for seniors and people with disabilities? That's pretty hard to say no to that. And most people did say yes, 89%. And then the question it is easier to say no to is, would you support a millage or special assessment dedicated to a countywide public transportation system in the county? Over 50% said yes, and then almost 40% or 30% said not sure, which means in any kind of a campaign, a targeted campaign, you probably will get some of those. So the chances of a countywide millage passing are positive. Next slide. Next slide. There you go. And so basically that's the bulk of the presentation. I know I skipped over stuff and I'll be glad to answer any questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
I don't get paid by the questions, so if I'm done, I'll be I do thank you again for all your time.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Good.
I think we had a motion for receive the report. Is that true? So any last chance for any questions? Didn't hear any? Okay, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, no? Motion is carried and the work report is received. Thank you. Next, receive a presentation from Marnie? Is that?
Yeah.
Marnie. Okay, sorry, I knew I was going to get that wrong. Daggett of Municipal Employees Retirement System, or MERS as it's more commonly known, regarding defined benefit versus defined contribution retirement plans.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me today. And I think I'm here more as a kind of a resource to talk through some of the options that you may have. And so the conversation that I've had with American, actually some others that came, Mayor and others came to our CEO roundtable just to talk about looking to the future of what that looks like from a retirement plan for your new hires. And so I think most of the conversation was around, we have a defined benefit plan. We have a city charter that says we have some stipulations into that as to what that plan looks like if you offer something different into the future. And so there were some questions on defined contribution. So I wanted to start really quickly with making sure that everyone understands the difference between a defined benefit plan and a defined contribution plan, so we're not making anyone feel like, I don't even know what she's talking about, because I can do that really quick. My kids just look at me crazy. So defined benefit plan is something that you currently offer today to the majority of your employees, where it is a set based on a formula. So the employee's final average compensation times the years of service times a multiplier. We do the math for them, and once they earn vesting, meaning they've been here a certain amount of time, they own that, and it becomes a lifetime benefit, meaning when they retire, they will get a monthly benefit for the rest of their life. Okay, and so that's a defined benefit plan. The benefit is defined. It is a 401A from IRS standards. There is also something called the 401A from, that's called defined contribution. So it's still under the public sector investment rules. And defined contribution is where the employer and or the employee or both put contributions into an account. The employee chooses how those dollars are invested within the lineup that is provided to them based on the earnings and gains and losses in the marketplace, and then any minimal fees that the employee has in the end an account balance, right? And they can use as they want. So they could go to Vegas with all of it. Don't ever recommend it, but they could, right? They could leave and go, woo! Or they could use it to live in retirement for the next, 20, 30 years. So that's the difference. The defined benefit plan, the benefit is defined and it is more, the employer chooses the provider tends to use the investments in those types of pieces. It is something that they can kind of guarantee. It's something they're going to get. The Michigan State Constitution protects that under that it cannot be diminished, everything that has been accrued already. For defined contribution, there's a little bit more flexibility. The employees have a lot more choices in what they can choose from an investment perspective, and they have a lot more choices on how quickly or slowly they use that. But it is just it's just a balance in the end. So those are the two pieces, the two types of plans that we're looking at. Wanted to find out a little bit from you if there are some questions as to where you'd like to go from there.
Anybody have questions? I guess I do have some. I know you mentioned our charter has some perhaps challenges if we decide to explore different routes. So I presume that's probably one of the first things we want to address if we want to go down that line. But beyond that, I mean, there are trade-offs. Like everything in life, there's trade-offs from one program to another. My experience is totally in the private sector. It's totally with defined contribution plans. That's where I live. That's where most of the world lives, I believe, today. Defined benefit plans are becoming more and more rare, as far as I know. And they are problematic throughout the nation for municipal entities and states and local governments because the government entity is assuming the responsibility for that. The other big downside of it is, from my perspective, if you happen to die young, you have this presumably accrued benefit that it just disappears when you pass away. You don't have the asset pool to leave to your heirs, like you might if you had a defined contribution plan. You might have a large savings account someplace, or investment account. Another thing is they're not portable. It's what, if you go back into private sector, you're not taking this pool of money with you. You can leave it behind. So I'm very interested in the possibility of moving us away from the defined benefit programs. I think it's more risk than the city should be assuming going forward into the future. Do you have any statistics on the number of municipalities that are going one way or the other?
Yeah, I don't know if I have.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot today with numbers and everything, but if you could provide some of that type of information, and I wasn't expecting that tonight.
No, I get that. I will tell you that private sector and public sector are very different, and so that has been historically true. And for a while in the late 90s, we did see a larger trend moving from defined benefit into defined contribution. And then we saw a pretty large backtrack of those groups going, wait, we need some kind of program, and we introduced what's called the hybrid program. At this time in Michigan, some municipalities, there's over 84% of municipalities in the MERS system. So we have the majority of Michigan in the MERS system. And when you look at that, we actually had many groups now asking that went to defined contribution to reopen to defined benefit. And in past, our plan document did not allow for that. Just this last year, with the amount of requests, our board reconsidered that. Some of those reasons for that are, and again, I can show you you can argue all day long about philosophy of defined benefit and defined contribution, and I can show you facts and good things on both. So it really is around what you're trying to build for your employees, because there are pros and cons to both. So from a defined benefit plan, it is something that is guaranteed. There are some death and duty disability benefits. So people who may get disabled in the line of duty or die in the line of duty, there's sometimes those considerations, especially, we've got some of our road commissions and other people that, maybe their job is more manual, and so disabilities can happen. That provides for some of those things. If you are vested, I do want to correct one thing. The defined benefit plan, if you are vested, does provide for a benefit regardless of your age. So you would be able to pass that on to someone else. It's not a lump sum, it's just a lifetime benefit until that person has then in their lifetime expired. For defined benefit, for many people it's that secure. Regardless of what the market does, regardless of how long I live, I'm going to have this set benefit, and it's something that I can depend on. For defined contribution, and typically you have to be at a municipality longer, so it tends to, if you want to keep people for a really long time, if your employment record is people stay for 20 or 30 years, that's what defined benefit is made for. There are other groups that in defined contribution, their people want flexibility. They want to be able to go in and out. They want to be able to move around from place to place. They tend to want to have control. Like you said, they move into private sector, out of private sector. You can roll that. Defined benefit, you don't lose that. It's just kind of deferred until you're age eligible to draw. So you never lose that unless you're not vested. But there is that moment there. So there's some pros and cons. So it really is around the goals of what you're looking for from a recruiting and retention perspective. I have groups that are like, we really like that fresh blood. We want people to come in. We don't need them to stay for 10, 20 years. We want them to stay every 5 to 7, and we're good with that. And some may stay longer, and we're good with that. We have others that are like, nope, we like someone to come in. We want them to stay a really long time. We like that kind of stability, and they tend to lean more towards that way. It may be based on who you're recruiting, right? A lot of times it's who's looking for the job, and sometimes that depends on the personalities that you're looking for. And so, again, you can tell me, Marty, we want to have a longer vesting schedule and defined contribution. We want to have a higher contribution rate so they don't want to leave, and we'll still keep the longevity, but we like the flexibility. We can build something like that. In defined benefit, you can say, well, we want a shorter vesting schedule, and we want other pieces there. We can certainly build based on what you wanted. There's also the hybrid, which is a piece of defined benefit and defined contribution. So it really depends on your goal and where you're going. I will speak to the fact that defined benefit plans have this really interesting reputation. And so it depends on how the plan has been managed. There's a lot of history with some of these plans. And so when we look at, we looked at just knowing when we were talking and looking at all of these pieces, we talk about what's called income replacement. So why do you offer, that's what I'm stepping on. I could not figure out what was rolling under my feet. I'm like, is the ground rolling? It's a pencil. I was like, what is happening? Sorry. I was afraid I was gonna trip. So when we think about retirement plans, why are you offering them? You're offering them so that when someone stops working, they still have some type of income, right? In the end, that's what retirement plans are. So when we look at what is that income replacement rate, that's what is your retirement plan providing for replacement of your income in the future. Does that make sense? Simply, that's what it's put. So when we compare a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan, and we use some general assumptions like someone who's 30 years old that works for 30 years till they're 60 and they make the same amount of money and all the, like, we try to use the same types of assumptions. We can look at a defined benefit plan where currently today you have a 2.25 multiplier. If they stay for 30 years, so a 30-year-old that's making $40,000 that stays for 30 years and retires at age 60 and lives till age 90, and we assume the wage inflation of 2%, a 2.25 multiplier provides a 65% income replacement rate. Meaning when they retire, they will get 65% of their income to live off of. Does that make sense? In order to do that same exact thing in a defined contribution plan, again, taking a person who is 30 years old, making $40,000, works for 30 years, we assume wage inflation of 2%, we're going to assume the investment rate of return is a 6% while working and a 4% in retirement. and they'll take equal distributions till 90. They're not going to go to Vegas. They're going to be responsible, all those good things. In order to get that income replacement rate, it's about a 20% defined contribution. So between the employer and employee, you put in 20%, that gets you to that 67% income replacement. So maybe it's not 20, maybe it's 19 or 18, but it's right in that number. So when I looked at those numbers and based on your, the rules within the city guidelines of if you change it, it needs to be of equal or greater value, that if I look to a defined contribution plan, it would be between about an 18 to 20% contribution between employee and employer. So then if I look at your annual valuation and I look at the normal cost, which means it's the amount of it costs for you to provide this 2.25 lifetime promise benefit to your employees, in that same division, the total normal cost is about 11.69% of payroll. The employee pays 5.5%, the employer pays 6.19%. So we're at about a little more than 11%, close to 12%, less than that 20%. That was if you're 100% funded, right? So if you were 100% funded today, meaning the legacy debt of the past was paid up, the defined contribution plan would be more expensive than the defined benefit plan. And that is absolutely typically true. When we look across the nation, we look across groups that stay at a higher funding level, the defined benefit plan is actually a much more cost-effective plan for the benefit that's provided from an income replacement level. But then when we look at those who have unfunded liability, like the city has, let's acknowledge that there's something else. You still have that unfunded accrued liability. So for that division, that's spread out over a period of time. That again is about a little over 12%. So again, right now you're probably paying close to 18% for those employees for that benefit. Now it's covering not only the actives, it's covering those retirees that weren't fully invested. So you're carrying on some of that legacy debt. So I thought it would be helpful to understand from an income replacement, also to look at it from a type of plan, because when you're looking at these types of things, what are the goals? Because we can create a plan that if you're like defined contribution is what we want, we can create a plan that helps you recruit or retain the employees that you want. If you want defined benefit, we can help you build a plan that's recruit, retain, right? So the question is more along the lines of, do you want to explore going down, looking at what it would look like for new hires in defined contribution and what that structure would look like? Do you want to look at like what a hybrid kind of program would be? We've not run any numbers yet because we wanted to understand what your questions and goals were before we went too far down that path. So I'm going to stop talking because I can do a lot of that and find out what questions you have for me.
Who has questions?
He explained it very well. I just don't know which way, we haven't talked about which way we wanted to go, so I'm not sure.
Well, excuse me, we brought Marnie up tonight to start the conversation.
Yeah.
And I know most, and me too, I'm learning. I've never really delved into these things. They're complicated from a standpoint, you touch something over here, it affects something over here.
Right.
And like Marnie brought up our legacy costs, when you look at what we're just, what we're in now, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you add in the legacy costs, that's where things start to, skew out. So we need to, get you a baseline. But before, and Marnie's right, we don't want to take MERS time up too of, if you're not interested in, say, just, if you're not interested in hybrids, then we won't waste time looking at that. But if you're interested in looking at, the replacement of DC to what we have with the DB, and then figure out how do we get these legacy costs under control and how does that look, then we look at that way. But we didn't want to, because they have a good staff, but it's not a gigantic staff.
We're not gigantic. And a lot of the numbers have to be run and certified by actuaries, which then can incur costs to you, and I usually advise you to know a little bit more of the direction of where you're going before you start running numbers, because I don't want you to run numbers and then have to spend money that you're not going to use. So I try to be, but again, we'll run whatever you want. I just try to be cautious of that.
Can you explain what the you said there's some challenges with our charter. What is?
Well, underneath our charter, there's a piece in it, and it's rare, because Marty said it's super rare. It doesn't, yeah, it's very special. It was written in the 70s, so maybe there was things going on, but what it basically says, instead of to say that if we do change it and we want to make it do something different, we must make it substantially similar. Instead of just saying it must be similar, it's substantially similar. And when we've talked about this in the past is, what does substantially similar mean? Like Marnie even used the, greater than or equal to type comment. So, but they specifically put that in the language because when you write something like that, you're pretty specific because, it's your charter and it's out there forever.
But so it's big, it probably though it was to protect employees from the city commission saying, we're going to cut that in half? I mean, is that...
Could be at the time, that was a lot of unionization at the time. Maybe it was the city fathers at the time saying, tell you what, if you don't unionize, this is one thing we can do to help protect you, and it's in the charter, so that it's always there. So that's one thing, that's just only speculation.
It's not very legal.
Yeah, it's speculation, but it's there, and it's really specific. And like I said, it's very bizarre. It's like, when Marnie and I talked for the first time ever, and she's like, wow, I just never seen that word. Substantially. Never seen that word used, because if we just said similar, then there we go. But
sure. And we have groups that'll say, well, going forward, we'll bridge to this lower multiplier, we'll change this on a cost, and that seems to be prohibited with your charter. And so there are some solutions that we offer to a lot of municipalities that are just not the same for this group. But again, we can run income replacement pieces, we can look at things like, I don't want to get too fancy about it, but, that's Erica, I started getting all excited. I'm like, well, we can do this design with this and that. So, because we have the 457 plan, which is a supplemental plan. So you could say, okay, well, we're going to put, the employee's going to put in, I don't know, let's pick a number, 7, and we're going to put in 7, let's say, and that gets to 14, but that's not to 20. But we could say, if they put in another 2, and we'll match the 2, and that gets us to 18, but they have to have some decision-making power. So we can do things like that on a going forward basis, if that's the design structure. So again, defined contribution has very different goals in some ways than defined benefit plans. And so we really do need to know what you're hearing from a recruiting retention perspective, what you're hearing those kind of pieces to be, because the trends are actually kind of shifting back. And so I always have the conversation of, this isn't a popularity contest, what are you looking for? Because I have some that are like, for this type of position, we like it to be rotating and we're good with that. So defined contribution makes a ton of sense. For this, we don't want that. And that's not the only criteria. I'm just trying to simplify that there are things that we want to know before.
Well, I can tell you personally, my objectives or some of my thinking along these lines is I am not out to harm the employees. I want to be able to offer the employees a good, fair, marketable or market rate plan or benefits across the board. That's not the objective, is to take care or not take care of the employees and do them harm. My primary goal is to protect the taxpayers from the future liabilities, because defined benefit plans, as we are in the case now, tend to be underfunded. So what that means is, okay, yeah, you can get by like some of your numbers, not forgive me, I'm getting wrong, but if we're paying in 14% today, but the calculation says we should be paying in 18% to fund the 65% income replacement piece, to me, we're getting farther behind, because no matter what plan you're in, if it takes 18%, it takes 18%. You can play with the numbers a lot, you can do different things, and the plans give you different options to do things, but over time, you're getting farther and farther behind if you're not fully funding everything. And I think, if you're not fully funding it, you're just pushing that liability into the future, which is going to cause more problems down the line. I don't see the money being more available in the future. It seems to get harder to come by every day, so I worry about a growing liability that perhaps someday may be extremely harmful to the employees, because we cannot keep that promise of delivering the benefit that we're promising them today. We've seen that happen in the private sector when pensions go under. I don't know how that works in the public side, but pensions go under.
Laws have changed. So
you kind of lose.
Too interesting to
your
that.
promises are not always kept.
sure. I think GASB 68 and some of the new accounting standard boards for across the state, I'm not going to try to throw a bunch of acronyms because it gets really painful, but when you look at it from an accounting and you also look at it from an actuarial perspective, it used to be that municipalities could never go bankrupt. That was not something that could happen. And so you could just take legacy debt and you could just keep rolling that amortization, almost like you're remortgaging your house every 30 years, the next year for 30 years, the next year for 30 years, the next year for, because it's never going to go away, it's never going to depreciate, it's a city, it's a county, it's a village, it's not going anywhere. That changed. You see people in the news like, oh, the city declared bankruptcy, this, went under, whatever that looks like. And so the government has stepped in and made some pretty strict rules on what that looks like. And so that amortization schedule is no longer allowed to do that if you want to be certified. So one of the things that has changed, and you're in that correction stage, is that you're on an amortization schedule for that legacy debt to be paid down within like 14 to 16 years. And so at that time, and then going forward, you will have a rolling 10 to 15, but each year will be paid off within 10 years so that it's called intergenerational equity, meaning your active worker today, you're going to be paying for your active worker today, not legacy debt. And so that's getting self-corrected because you're absolutely right. The time of the past was massive. You could just accrue and change benefits and promise and never really have to completely deliver. And so the IRS and others have caught up on that. And there's a lot of new rules on that. And so that is something, I'm not going to say you're not going to have liability from year to year, but it's not going to be able to grow like it did for literally 30 to 50 years. It's not allowed to happen anymore. So some of those things have been corrected. You're on a path for your legacy debt to be paid off within less than 20 years now. And then going forward, it will be on that kind of layered amortization with a fixed date for each of those occurrences in the market, which should soften some of that. I'm not saying that that's the only answer, and I'm not saying that that's the only type of plan, because again, from a budgeting perspective, defined contribution is so much easier to understand. Bottom line, you put a percent of payroll, it's easy. It is 100% easy. You don't have to worry about the market. That is all on your employees to decide and to weather. Defined benefit plans, there is more of that. You have a lot more management and decision making because of the fact that you will have to weather some of that market adjustments, and you may have to increase their contributions or decrease those, and that's something that you can do, but there is some of that. It will not be legacy debt like you've dealt with in the past. It's going to be more of an ongoing piece and rolling and smaller because that has been taken care of, but there is that potential, absolutely. And so that is something that people have to be very conscious of, is right there. Again, there are pros and cons to both of those plans. We offer, well, there's three. So we offer all three plus the addition of the 457, and we can help you see what it is now. We don't have a crystal ball. Never going to be able to tell you what's going to happen in 10, 15 years, but as it stands today, those are the considerations to think about for sure.
To clear, if what people have already, we don't change that, right? I mean, what people have had up until this point, they grandfathered or stay with that, but we'd be making a decision for future employees, or people get a choice?
There are options. So there are options. Everything, the state constitution protects anything that's been accrued to this point. So you can't take something that they earned just last week, right? Like, it's already accrued and done. But you could say, as of January 1, everyone is moving to defined contribution. And then their defined benefit would be set in time, frozen, they're not losing anything, but it's not changing, but they go forward, and that's changing the future liability of your current actives, so that will adjust it a little bit. If you say, no, we're not doing affecting anyone that already has the plan. The people in the plan are the people in the plan. We're not changing that. It's almost like we're going to another room, and anybody hired after this date joins in the other room, and they have defined contribution going forward. That will not change your legacy debt at all. It will not change any of those costs that are going to go up for the next, 14 to 16 years. That's not changing that. It's just saying in 14 to 16 years, it will look differently. Right? So a lot of groups think, if I go to DC, then I won't have this legacy debt. That doesn't go away. Like, it's already accrued, it's already there. A lot of it's for your retirees that are already drawing. So It's there, it won't change. It's just saying, what do we want when we're looking into the future? So you can change it now. It will adjust a little bit. You've got a pretty legacy staff, so it's not going to adjust it a lot going forward, but you can for the future. So you're really making a decision more from a future probably perspective than what you've already accrued and will still be on your books for the next 14 to 16 years. And that's in the annual valuation that some of you get the lovely pleasure of talking to me about. And I try to not put you to sleep, so.
So there, I mean, you mentioned another option as well, as far as if we didn't have that speed bump in our charter, you perhaps could offer some other options, modifications to our current plan.
Yeah.
And I guess I would look to the commission, fellow commissioners here. Is there interest in having additional conversation at this point? I mean, I can't do it just on my say so. If you guys aren't interested in talking about anything, changing anything, exploring possibilities, we can stop it now. Or if everybody's interested in exploring things a little further, what options are, whether it be a some sort of modifying what we've got, modifying the options to, offering both types of plans. I forget what you call that. Hybrid, yes, sorry, that word escaped me. So there's all kinds of options out here. And I don't know if the board at this point, we've talked about it off and on. I've been here 18 years, various times it's popped its ugly head up, and we've talked a little bit and never gone very far. So if people don't have an appetite for a discussion right now, I don't want to waste MERS time and trouble and our staff time, because there is going to be some lifting to be done if we're going to have a conversation.
As I was sitting here for a while, I was wondering, what's our motivation to do this? Is there a problem? Are we not attracting people because of our retirement plan, or why would we want to look into this? And as I see it now, we have a liability under the plan that we're under now that could be very costly.
And that probably won't change.
Yeah.
So it's already what it is. So I want to clarify, because some people get really excited, and I'm like, oh, there's no easy button here.
No, we're not going to get out of that.
Yep.
But there's no sense in compounding that problem if it's going to continue. It might be worth looking into.
Does the speed bump in the charter require, can we discuss options? It just has to equal the same percentage? Or are you saying we have to change the charter? Or what do you?
You can discuss options, but
But we're limited.
You're limited. So that's Greg is asking that question.
Right.
Because it will take a lot of staff time, and then working with MERS to run whatever particular scenarios we want to look at. And that's what we talked about there, and Marty's alluded to it. What are our goals? Retention, recruitment, retention. Are we satisfied with what we have is doing what we need to recruit and then retain, or do we feel that there's something better that would actually recruit or retain someone better? Marty mentioned that there's our municipalities that are, kind of backtracking a little bit, looking at, saying, gosh, we're not holding on to people. Maybe we get them in, but we're not holding on to them. And like Marty said, with your defined benefit, that encourages someone to stick around longer than a defined contribution would, because you're just chasing something a little bit, that pays a little bit more. So, am I speaking correctly?
You are. I would add, though, a lot of times what comes into play, and you're not going to be allowed to do it because of your charter, so there's a safeguard there, is that there are people that say, well, we have a 2.25 multiplier, but new hires are going to get a 3% contribution rate, and they're going to put in 0, and guess what? They're just, income replacement rate is just not even comparable, so of course they're going to go to things like that. If you structured your defined contribution correctly, there are times that's more attractive. To your point, you prefer that, and there are people who prefer that. There are people who don't. So again, you have to kind of understand, who are you recruiting, who are you retaining, and it is conversations with your staff and future, because that's, and yours answer may be different, right, than Ithaca's, may be different than Ingham County's, may be different than my, Calhoun County. They're all very different demographics, and so that's why I say there's no right or wrong in any of these.
Right.
I want to make sure that I'm clear on that, but if you put in a plan that has that equality, is when you're looking at income replacement, it's a lot easier conversation to say, well, it's not that you have have something like, you have less than a plan when we hired you because you didn't get in the door in this room on this date. It's just a different mechanism, right? So if you're more equitable, which you kind of are pushed along to be, it's a little bit easier. But for some of my groups, that is difficult. And it also depends on your makeup. We do see more of our, public safety, road commission, certain groups like that really want more of that. And then there are some that are really comfortable. I mean, your group chose to go to defined contribution and they're comfortable with it. And so it really depends. Like I said, demographics, you can say numbers all day long, and that's great for generalities, but you know your community. And that's where we need your input as to what that looks like for your community, for sure.
So we're currently, just to reiterate, what are we doing right now?
Right now, we've got defined contribution for most employees other than police.
Right.
They under their contract chose and wanted, pursued defined contribution plan.
The rest are defined.
I personally would think that for right now, we could stay where we're at. And maybe if we all, I would personally like to talk to employees maybe and talk more with Eric, about it. And I make a decision tonight is what I'm saying. It's like talk about it more,
Well, and we did, I mean, it's not.
No, I know we're not.
No, I'm saying, I'm asking a different question.
Okay.
We had a big, huge meeting over the library. My sense of time maybe not correct, but was that long ago? When we did this change, because didn't we move to this defined contribution plan, or we've always had
this for decades.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the healthcare savings program. We're over there, we added that, this entire healthcare.
Correct, yes.
So I was there, so I was like, oh, I know that one.
And that's why I wanted to clarify. So we've been at the defined, this has not been something that we discussed with employees or had gotten a feel.
The other thing, I think we've changed that, like the last police contract, for some reason, we put a cap on what the police could
Right, and that's what I
contribute.
remembered.
And we pulled that off.
Yes,
in the contract.
because if people want to contribute.
Yeah, why would we limit it? It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
as far as pensions, we haven't changed anything.
What we could maybe do is give you some more information on what these things mean in writing, so you could review them when you have time.
Well, do you have any, and you don't have.
That way it doesn't,
Do you have
from that
a
standpoint, it
feel of
doesn't take.
What people, because on the one hand, I feel like, and I'm curious to hear what anyone else feels like, but I feel like our city employees are people that I personally feel benefit from that there is a learning curve, even just as a commissioner, there's a learning curve, and so we want to be doing something that encourages people to perhaps stay, but I don't know what anybody else feels about that. But I certainly am not a good one for making decisions, but I would like to hear what people think about that. It's hard to make decisions about these important things. And I want there to be a benefit, if at all possible, without, we are fiscally responsible for the city's dollars and the taxpayer dollars. And that is an important thing to pay attention to. I also feel like we run effectively when we have effective employees, and I see personally a benefit for people being here for a longer stretch of time, not a new finance director every 2 years, or I can see, I understand the value of bringing in new people. But I also think that there's a big learning curve, and so I don't know how to. It's not apples to apples, and I don't know how to decide whether an apple or an orange is better, and I don't know.
And I don't have a magic crystal ball either, but my view of the community is we've got a pretty stable community. I don't think we see a lot of turnover in our staff. I don't see a lot of turnover actually around our communities. People tend to stay here quite a bit. They like it here.
So your feeling is that what we're doing?
I think either plan could be beneficial.
Yeah.
Personally, I think defined contribution plans are much more beneficial to the individual myself. That's my opinion. I think as far as recruiting, I don't know as it makes a great deal of difference. For some people, it's an advantage, particularly the example that I've always heard is, a younger person coming in and likes the portability of defined contribution plan. They can pile a bunch of money in while they're young and single, and when they move on to something else, they can take that money with them.
And I think that's a benefit.
They're gone. They don't have to be here for 15 years to be vested.
Right. No, I think that's a big
So there's benefits in either way. Like I said, it's not to hurt anybody. It's a concern. We have a fiduciary liability or responsibility to our taxpayers, not to continue to burden the future. Push costs into the future that need to be paid today. That's one of my main concerns. But we also do have a fiduciary responsibility to our employees, the people that we've hired and promised employment and promised these benefits. I want to make sure we're meeting those obligations as well. So it's not an either or. I think it's a balancing. Yeah, I think that's the word I'm looking for, a balance. So
I think I tend to agree with Greg in a lot of the categories. The biggest one I think is just employee flexibility. That's what I typically would push for, and I think I'm geared very similar financially to what Greg's saying. It's kind of how I'm wired, so.
Well, and it does make sense. I mean, I worked for the Ann Arbor Library decades ago, and when you put money into your retirement there, once I was not working there anymore, you could not, it didn't take away what you had, but you couldn't add any more to that. So the portability, I think, is a benefit because people don't work someplace for 50 years necessarily anymore. It seems more fluid.
But again, that's like Marnie said, that's who you're trying to recruit. It's going to be a person that sees that when you're handing out that offer sheet and it says a salary, then it says what the possible benefits are. Someone's going to look at that and they're going to say, okay, the salary and here's the pension or the DC. And they're going to say, well, that's not for me, so they turn that down. Or I see the salary and I see a DB where, okay, that to me works, but it's going to have people like Dan, thinking, nope, I want to be
somebody else is going to look at that same paper and say, well, I got to be here 10 years.
10 years.
Vested?
10 years
Wait a minute,
vested.
what if I only last 5? Then I could have had a pile of money and instead I've got nothing. So there's a trade-off. I think the larger question is how interested are we as a group into doing a whole lot of reading and having a whole lot of conversations because that's what it's going to take to educate ourselves.
Absolutely.
And then we've got to turn around and make sure staff is up to the task as well. They've got to be educated, they've got to be informed, and they've got to understand what we're asking of them as well.
And what you just explained, there are new federal laws in place that we're not, even if we were so inclined, pushing that.
Yeah, we don't let you do it anymore.
Yeah, but that's my whole.
We don't let you do it anymore.
No, we don't want to. That's what I'm saying. That either one, that's not going to happen anymore. So we're not, redoing the mortgage every year. So to use your analogy, and so that, I think I'm comfortable with leaving things as are.
And then when we were finished with all those debates, then we would have to figure out whether it is substantially similar, which could kill the
Which
whole
we will
thing.
never do.
Which could kill the whole thing.
And I like, because with what we have, the city is required to put in a portion, but can employees put as much as they wanted, or are they limited as well?
So what's interesting about 401As, and it's different than 401Ks with private sector, so I am going to go into that because it's unique in that 401As, which are public sector, meaning you're not allowed to offer a 401K, you're not allowed, it's not against the law. So from that perspective, in defined benefit, you're told what you contribute. So the employees put in 5.5, that's what they put in. In defined contribution, also for 401A, employees are told what they have to put in. They can't put in more or less. It is mandatory.
Okay.
And so unless they negotiate, the employer's putting in more, but everyone across the board has to do that. The advantage to public sector plans is you also have a third option, which is that 457 plan. And so when you have a 457 plan, that's a supplemental savings. So DB and DC people can put in as much as they want. There is no vesting schedule to that, so they can set aside dollars and they can choose tax pre-tax or Roth, which is post-tax, and then they, again, if they pay the taxes up front, that can grow. So the employee from a DC and a DB, IRS doesn't let you make those changes unless it's across the board in negotiations. The employees are going to pay what is there, and they can't change that. In fact, employee choice even in DC is not allowed once they're hired in, unless it is mandated across the board for everyone. That's what 457 is for. So when you negotiate and do those things, you can do anything you want in that 457. Employer can put a match in if they want to encourage more savings. But from a DB/DC perspective, legally, they have to put in what is mandated, and they can't change that once they pick a choice.
So can you do, the 457, is that a completely separate thing, or you can do that in addition to
Yeah, you can do it in addition. It is meant to be in addition.
Oh, that's cool.
It is meant to be in addition, so it's great. I don't know who you don't have the 457 with MERS, you have that with someone else.
Mission Square.
Mission
We used to be ICMA.
Yep. So that's something that, again, you can talk to them about. We're happy to run numbers to show you the comparisons there. We do have groups that say things like, well, we want to encourage a match, or we want to do those things. And you can do that where the employer dollars still stay vested in like a DC-like plan, and the employee dollars go over here, so you still control some of those dollars. Harder to do between two providers. That makes a little bit more of a manual piece, but it can be done. But that's what 457 is for, because DC is and DB and hybrid, they are very locked down by IRS code. So that's something to note that's different than 401k. 401k combines them all. These are two separate programs, but we can, for MERS, it's just all in the same statement, it's the same investment, so it feels pretty the same for everybody, so it's not confusing, but it is a separate choice. So, and I'm not saying, again, 457 through Mission Square, they have the same type of rules.
And we don't necessarily have to make any decisions tonight. We can talk about this later, but maybe just, I appreciate the conversation. We'll talk some more, and if we have an appetite, we'll drag you back up here. So.
Again, there's sometimes that your employees want to know more, so if you're having those discussions, I have groups that go, can we have like employee representatives and the board come into kind of like an informal session where we're all learning together and we're all asking questions and things like that? We're more than happy to do that. Whatever feels comfortable to make sure that you and your employees feel like you're communicating and understanding the facts, we're happy to help. So let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the partnership.
Absolutely.
And certainly your time tonight. So.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I believe we have a motion on the table to receive a report. We don't. No, I'm sorry. I missed that. We have a motion.
You have to do that all over again.
Sorry. Rewind.
I do believe we have a motion support, so any comments or questions, last chance? All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, no? So we have received the court report, even though I did it out of order, my apologies. Appropriations, is anyone in favor of paying bills this evening?
So moved.
Support.
Motion support, are there any questions about the bills? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed would be no. The motion is carried. Thank you. Commissioner comments. Roxanne, would you like to lead us off tonight?
Sure. Thank you, Marnie, for explaining all that. I appreciate that. I had two things. I wanted to request permission to miss the meeting on 6/27. I'll be in Connecticut visiting my sailor son, so I really hope you'll excuse me.
He'll be on shore?
Well, he is in welding school right now, and then he goes to Virginia to head out in a submarine for 6 to 9 months of no communication. So I'm not super excited about that, but I'll learn. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, that Allen Public Schools is now offering childcare, and so we are going to have, you can enroll your 3 and 4-year-old for a 3-day, 4-day, or 5-day a week daycare. We're having an open house on August 1st from 1 to 3 and 5 to 7. And it will be from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. We're also offering a tuition-based preschool class and before and after school. So if you have any questions, you can call 466-7511, and Nikki Holton at the superintendent's office will
Call the superintendent's office.
answer those questions. Yeah, because for this year, she's answering them, and then it'll all come back to me. But we're excited about that, and for anyone who doesn't know, first grade is moving over to Hillcrest, so it'll just be daycare, preschool, and kindergartners at Loose Road.
So that's great. We still get, our daycare has been closed for 5 years, and Joanne still gets probably 8 calls a week. People looking for daycare.
There's a huge
So make sure she starts with.
I will do that. No, I will. She would love to have a place to stay. Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. Danny?
Just thanks to Brett and Larry for that presentation. I think it's positive to see the efficiency that I think some of those programs are run. Sometimes you don't think about them until you hear about them in a presentation like that. So I think a lot of things that we're doing over there is good. I think we continue to grow and continue to improve. But it's good to see that, especially with Slipper and the uniqueness of what that program is. It's positive to see that success. So congrats. Thank you.
Okay. That's right. Dan, Roger?
As most of you know, I live where all of the crazy construction is on Harvard. I'm on the corner of Harvard and Vassar. Living with all the dust and the noise and all of that kind of thing. But I wanted to say that the people from Ward Construction have been extremely courteous and very, very nice to, talking with people and letting people through. They still have to get through the mess sometimes to get into the college. And I have just been very impressed. I also wanted to shout out to Dave personally for his taking charge of a problem that we had. I wound up, after the construction was done with the new sewer system on Harvard, with 2 inches of sewage in my basement. But my line was supposed to be on Vassar, and we couldn't find where it was going. And Dave would not let the problem go yesterday. And turns out my sewer line does go out on Harvard, and we didn't know about it. So, but he got it taken care of, and I wanted to thank you publicly for that. That was.
Yay.
Yay. Yes, yay, yeah. I now have a sewer, yes.
How long have you lived there, Roger?
53 years, and we had no idea where the sewer line was.
There you go.
So.
That's the magic of a municipality. You push the lever and it goes away.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that everything left? Is that right?
Yes.
Larry?
I have a couple of things. It's something hopefully we can maybe get on an agenda in the future. I've been hearing a lot of complaints. We have a deer population problem in the city limits. They pretty much kind of own the city. And been hearing more and more reports of issues with ticks and health issues with ticks. And that made me think about it more. If there's a possibility we could look at the state of Michigan of somehow controlling the deer population within the city limits. I'm not sure what that entails, but if we could look into it. And the other thing is, I love where the new farmer's market is. It's great, but I know in the beginning there's usually not too many vendors, so there's a couple, but St. Louis and Ithaca, quite a few more vendors than we do. And I found out through somebody that St. Louis has an actual manager, farmer's market manager, and I was told we don't have anything like that. If that's something we can look into possibly getting, so that we could have a little bit stronger, better farmer's market here. If that's something we could look into.
I believe the farmer's market is still a chamber function at this point, right? It's not a function of the city per se.
It works through the county. Yeah, the Chicago Chamber, yes. We work through that.
Okay.
Yeah, but
And there is some conversation already about some changes. I don't
yes. Well, we've discussed the possibility of can we possibly share, because we don't, obviously we're not on the same day. St. Louis is on Thursday evening. We're on Saturday morning. The discussion Wiesenberg has been a very good vendor for us for many, many years. And they're usually down there every week. She did mention to me though that some of the newer vendors, they're not necessarily all that interested in being there in the early morning on a weekend. So there may be some other things that we need to look at besides just trying to find a manager is at the right time to do it. Also, so, but no, point taken, Lori, and I'll bring some information from the chamber for the commission to take a look at.
Thank you.
Sorry. Michelle?
There is a group of students visiting Alma College for like a missions trip type thing, and they are working throughout the city to clean up. So if you see some students volunteering to clean up, just make sure you thank them. And the mural downtown is looking very well. And just to note that when you drive downtown, even on the summer weekends, there's lots of people out and about in our downtown. So it's exciting to see that positive things are happening, continue to happen.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a long time, but I think this is their first meeting since the Highland Fest. So I just wanted to express appreciation for all the volunteers and everyone that played a part in that. It's fantastic to see so many people come out and visit and participate.
Sarah? No? Yep. No? Eric?
I'll just piggyback off of what Andrew had to say. Tuesday, back in the office, talked to 2 contractors, one sign, one on the project, and both of them came up to the Elma Highland Festival. And one was actually wearing the t-shirt they bought at that Highland Festival, so that's kind of cool.
Yes, it was a very good year at the festival. Whoever did the weather here did a good job. So that's always a big factor with the festival. So,
52 out of 54.
Yeah, echo what everybody else said. Great work, and thanks to everybody. The presentations were wonderful, very informative. With that, we'll open it up to members of the public. If anyone would like to address the commission, please go to the podium, state your name and address, and share your thoughts.
I guess I'm being forced to, so somebody come with me.
The more the merrier.
Hi, I'm Liberty Cromer. I was here a while ago about the flags to get an exemption. Okay, we're not. But I would like to thank all of you for that because we have how many? Up to 129. We have 129 flags all throughout Gratiot County. And yeah, thank you.
So yeah, the fundraiser is fantastic. We're actually getting people, when they come to your door and say, please sign us up for this, you know you got a good fundraiser. So, thanks.
Do people still go online and sign up?
Yes, for sure.
Or are you done?
Oh, no. You can do now for 4th of July. So.
Yeah, oh, gosh. Do you have a website you can read?
Yes.
Go.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what the easiest method is.
Maybe if you could get it.
If you want to send it,
the brochure and the QR code, I'll bring it down and put it in City Hall.
Okay.
We have them, I've got it in front of the chamber building.
And maybe we could include the link in the minutes somehow?
But it's Troops, what is it? Elma Troop.
Yeah, it's troop611elma.com.
Troop611elma.com.
Yeah, and then you'll see at the header it says Honor with Flags.
Honor with Flags.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I will get a flyer for the City Hall here.
Perfect. And the flags look great. So thank you guys for doing that. It looks really nice in the city. And beyond, I guess. If you're going across the county, you're doing a lot of traveling.
Riverdale, the Breckenridge,
Yep, down to Ithaca.
all of Gratiot County.
You're very ambitious. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the commission? Share your thoughts, please.
Dave Owens, I live in Seville Township, and I don't speak for the entire county board, but I want to thank the city and Eric for working to be released from the airport authority. And I think that the lawyer is a lot better looking than he has been in the last few months.
Anybody else want to? Okay, hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn this evening.
So moved.
Got a motion to support. All those in favor say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any opposed, no. The motion is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Everybody have a great evening.